This happened right before the Philippine-American War. This happened in Hong Kong because Aguinaldo's exiled there. Everybody said that this led to the Philippines being colonized once again. The President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, sent George Dewey to Hong Kong to have a conversation with Aguinaldo. Dewey said that they wanted revenge on Spain for bombing the Havana. Spain bombed Havana because the US started pushing Spain out of Cuba, which is their colony. America started pushing out Cuba, which is their colony. America was pushing out Spain because America was really good business partners with Cuba, but Spain tried to stop it because it was Spain's colony. They said, so the Americans, Dewey told Aguinaldo that they just wanted to have revenge in Spain. They didn't want to colonize because it was too far. The Philippines and the States. The Philippines and the United States. It's really, really far. Right now, by plane, you'd take 13 hours, if I'm not mistaken. What more by boat? Wouldn't that be a big waste of gas? Another reason was the revenge. They really wanted revenge on Spain because they really bombed Havana. What country wouldn't want revenge for a country bombing something, for killing people who were innocent? Right after the conversation, Aguinaldo trusted Dewey. But the mistake of Aguinaldo was he wasn't able to put it into writing. Dewey stated that his word is stronger than any written document. So Aguinaldo trusted him. Once they got here, they started fighting Spain off. But after several days, Spain left, and once the Intramuros opened, the Americans went in but didn't allow the Filipinos. While they secured Intramuros, they raised the American flag, and Aguinaldo thought they had a conversation, but he had no proof for it. So this now started the Philippine-American War. Although if I was in Aguinaldo's position, I would without a doubt trust George Dewey, because he actually thought that it's true. He was very from the Philippines. He trusted them. Why would US waste so much money on it? If I was I believe Aguinaldo trusted Dewey so much because the Philippines here had big time. So this when Americans came into play. They were superpowers, so they could basically do a lot in wars. They could actually do anything.
The Mock Battle of Manila. Before all of this had begun, the Filipinos had already executed the siege of Manila, which kept the Spaniards inside of Intramuros. Their plan was to cut off the supplies of food and water coming into Intramuros from the city. By doing so, the Spaniards will be forced to go out of Intramuros and right into the Filipinos surrounding them. Emilio Aguinaldo had a conversation with Governor General Agustin about the surrender of Spain to the Filipinos. But as he was going to surrender, he was replaced by Governor General Johannes. Johannes had already made an agreement with the Americans to have a mock battle, which the Filipinos will have no part in. They agreed that the Spaniards would surrender in this battle after exchanging gunshots with the cost of a few casualties. The Spaniards agreed to this because if they surrendered to the Filipinos, the reputation of a strong country would take a big hit. For the Americans, they had already taken the Philippines off Spain's hands according to the Treaty of Paris. In the Treaty of Paris, the Americans would give Spain $2 million while Spain will hand over the Philippines. Back to the mock battle, the Filipinos had no idea that this battle happened. There are some controversial questions on the mock battle, such as, could the Filipinos have done something to interfere in the battle? And could the Filipinos have exerted more effort to interfere in the battle? Well, for they did not know anything about it, they could not have done anything to interfere in it. Although maybe Filipino leaders such as Aguinaldo could have exerted more effort by sending spies to all of Manila to further investigate on the war. Unfortunately, the Filipinos did not, and Spain submitted to America. Following recent news, this event is similar to our current issue with China and the Spratly Islands. The US is getting involved with our territorial dispute with unknown and hidden motives as they left the Philippines a century ago. History is repeating itself as the US is once again helping the Philippines, but in reality, they are interested in business expansion with China. The information given, my stand on the mock battle of Manila, is that the Filipinos did not do their best to interfere with the battle, which made the siege of Manila fail as well. Following the events that happened after the arrival of the Americans, Spanish colonization was slowly decreasing in the islands. The Americans were driving out the Spaniards out of the Filipinos' home territory, and independence was closely achieved by both the Filipinos and the US. New to this, the Filipinos, headed by Dewey-Aguinaldo, decided to put the islands under a dictatorial government, but soon realized a large amount of Spaniards and Americans in the Philippines. As recommended by Apolinario Mabini, Aguinaldo declared the Philippines to be headed by a revolutionary government. Ambrosio Gonzales Bautista, a prominent lawyer, then recommended Emilio Aguinaldo to declare independence, especially since the Spaniards were recovering from defeat one battle after another. From the balcony of his house in Cavite, Cavite, or Cavite El Viejo, Aguinaldo declared Philippine independence on June 12, 1898, at around 4 in the afternoon. The national anthem, Marcha Filipina Magdalo, or known as Lupang Hinirang, was composed in 1898 by Julian Felipe, with lyrics in Spanish adapted from the poem Filipinas, written by Jose Palma in 1899. The Philippine flag was designed by General Emilio Aguinaldo and soon by Doña Marcela Marino de Agoncillo, Lorenza Agoncillo, and Delfina Herbosa de Natividad in Hong Kong. In the Philippine flag, the blue field stands for peace, truth, and justice. On the other hand, the red field stands for patriotism. The white triangle stands for equality and fraternity. The 8 rays of the yellow sun represents the original 8 provinces that started the Philippine Revolution against the Spanish rule. Beside it are 3 small yellow stars, which represent Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Admiral Dewey was invited to witness the celebration but turned down the request. He believed that the Philippines wasn't ready for independence. The act of a Declaration of Independence, or Acta de la Proclamación de la Independencia del Pueblo Filipino, was prepared and written by Ambrosio Gonzales Bautista in Spanish, who also read the said declaration. The declaration was signed by 97 Filipinos and 1 retired American artillery officer, Colonel L.M. Johnson. It is believed that it was Aguinaldo who waved the Philippine flag from the center window. Ambrosio Gonzales Bautista did. It declared that the Filipinos are and have the right to be free and independent, and that the nation from this day will become independent and cut all political ties with Spain. The original proclamation is now kept in the National Library of the Philippines in Manila. The Philippines Declaration of Independence played a big part of boosting the Filipinos' morale, but it had both advantages and disadvantages. One advantage of declaring independence early was that it made the Americans aware of the wishes and goals of the Filipinos. Us declaring independence early made the Americans realize that all the Philippines wanted was independence. Another big advantage was that it showed the unity of the Filipinos and that they were slightly prepared for independence. With a common goal, the Filipinos worked together to make the Philippine flag, national anthem, and gather together. The third advantage is we no longer live by the rules of another nation, but the nation's independence was short-lived as it posed a lot of disadvantages. One being that the American and Spanish soldiers were still in the Philippines. They also didn't have true independence because they were blinded by the Americans' so-called help. They had no idea of the ulterior motives of the Americans of the new imperialists. Lastly, the Philippines, after being colonized for 300 years, was unprepared for the sudden independence given to them. Looking at the issue, we are reminded of the increasing number of abuses to OFWs. Due to the declining economy of the Philippines, many Filipinos choose to work abroad to provide their families with a better life. This includes higher education, income, and welfare. but a lot of times they're not given the proper salary, are physically abused, and emotionally tormented. One example is Margie Postillas. A Filipino household worker said she was left with no other choice but to jump off the second floor of her employer's home to escape the abuse she experienced. This makes them strive for independence from their abuses, just like how the Philippines during the Spanish and pre-American era strived for long sought for independence. I believe that the Philippines declared independence at the wrong time, since the Philippines wasn't truly independent. There were a ton of Americans still arriving at the islands of the archipelago, and Americans have a reputation of being deceitful. They could do anything they want at any moment, and this may harm the Filipinos.